retinal degeneration. Inherited retinal disease are a heterogeneous group of diseases which a prevalence of 1 to 1,000 or 1 to 2,500 if you're looking at different cohorts. The IRDs can affect pediatric groups to the adulthood, as I presented to you to the 3 different cases. And there are currently more than 270 diseases which we know identified with the genes affected the IRD. So it's not that uncommon. If you look at the carrier states and the disease state, things are even getting more interesting as well. Bioinformatic analysis of human genetic data of 138,000 people suggests that 36% of the human population having one gene defected for the inherited retinal disease, meaning that in any group that you are, 1 out of the 3 people have a gene which is mutated for inherited retinal disease. So why is the disease even less than 1 to the 3rd? Just because there are so many of them, as we said, 270 different genes affecting the IRD. But as you can see in the different population from the Latino to Hispanic and whites, all of them have about 15 to 30% of the population having at least 1 gene associated with inherited disease. On these bars, the darker purple is actually the ABCA4 population. As you can see, it's a good portion of it, which is a culprit of Stargardt disease, and most of the population have that mutation. The journey to identify the IRD starts not too long ago by identifying DNA as a genetic marker 70 years ago. Around the same time, which was the age of our 3rd case of the day. It took 24 years to sequence the DNA and 30 years to have PCR. We have PCR only about the age of our 2nd case of the day. And we have only been able to fully sequence the human genes for the past 20 years. And over the past 30 years, we had identified more than 270 genes that is associated with inherited retinal disease. I plotted it in a graph that was mentioned in the Retinal as well, which is the pace of discovery of the IRD has been rapid, and approximately 50 genes identified every 4 years for the past 2 decades. To date, more than 270 genes we know about, but we know another 37 genes which we found the chromosome location, but could not pinpoint where exactly on that chromosome the gene is involved. And for now, we think we had identified 65% of all of the IRDs. So that 270 genes is only 75% of the total genes that's affecting the IRD population. So it's still work in process. Does knowing the genetic mutation equals the diagnosis and vice versa? It is not. So there are big categories of diseases, which I try to plot it here, like retinitis pigmentosa, Leber's congenital anomalies, cone rod dystrophy, or LCA. And each one of them has a bunch of group of genetic mutation in them, and there are some overlaps. So, for example, the CFL mutation is not only for the retinitis pigmentosa, but also the cone rod dystrophy and Leber congenital amaurosis can be a presentation of that genetic mutation. So if I do the clinical diagnosis based on the picture, I cannot say that I can identify the genes based on that. So knowing the genetic mutation is as important as the clinical diagnosis. So for example, on those 3 cases that we mentioned, what is the genetic cause of those and how can we tell that? There's a nice study that ASRS, American Society of Retina Specialists, put a survey out in 2019 asking about the willingness of the retina specialists to perform a genetic testing. And it's a paradigm of a shift from, and you can see it in US compared to our colleagues outside. 70% of retinal specialists in the United States do the genetic testing or send to someone that they know would do the genetic testing, compared to about 50% in our international colleagues. And this is due to reducing the cost and ease of performing these tests in the United States. There are IRD trackers, Invitae, there are companies that does it for free even, with a huge panel of tests. The excitement about inherited retinal disease and genes is around the fact that we may be able to manipulate the gene and correct the culprit by means of gene therapy. And it all starts back in '77, even before we can do the PCR, which is a nice journey. The first human gene trial was in 1990. And then after that, the RPE65 gene therapy trial start in 2007. And it takes about 10 years to get approved as a modality for treatment. And Luxturna, which is the first approved genetic gene therapy in human, is actually the one that is done in the ophthalmology. And this is how make this field so exciting for an ophthalmologist like me. There's only one other gene therapy that approved after the Luxturna, which is for the SMN, motor neuron dystrophies, which currently is approved by FDA. How do we deliver those gene therapies? There are multiple routes of delivering. One is we can put it in a vector, which is like a virus, and we put the genes inside of it, and that virus incorporates into the cells and tissue in the back of the eye and transfer the gene which is defected to the cells of the interest. And the delivery can be something like just injecting into the eye directly, or putting a long needle that can reach the back of the eye to inject it to the subretinal space, or making larger molecules or cargos that can use as AONs to deliver the genes that we would like. And it all depends what kind of gene we want to transfer. Some genes are larger than the others, and the cargo of a virus is not good enough for them. So for example, the adenovirus, which has a lot of interest in, and Luxturna is one of them, can only transfer genes up to 4.5 kilobytes of the capacity. ABCA4, which we talked about and is one of the most common cause of IRDs, is over 8 kilodaltons. So it cannot be fit in an AAV. So knowing different cargos and how we can deliver them into the tissue that we like is something that can adjust our treatment in the future as well. How everything started and how did we find that the AAV vector is actually something that can be delivered, that the genes start back in '96, as we mentioned. And the picture on the right, I'm trying to illustrate to you that they put a GFP, which is basically a fluorescing protein. All the fluoresce in the animals is coming from some sort of protein itself. And they were trying to test if we can deliver that GFP inside the cells of the retina, so they would fluoresce green as well. And they could do that. The proof of concept of a vector of a virus can be delivered to the retina to express the gene was done in that model. And they used the AAV vector to transfer the GFP in a nuclear layer of the retina, which is where the photoreceptors resides. And it wasn't stopped at that point. And in 2001, Ackland et al., and in 2005, they showed that RPE65, which is one of the genes of IRD causing retinitis pigmentosa, can restore vision in the dog's model of the RPE65. And they showed it nicely by using the electroretinogram, showing the activity of the retina restores. So it's not only that we deliver the gene, but also the function coming back into those cells that had been lost. Clinical trial starts in 2007 and FDA approved 10 years after in 2017. So it is a process. Why did it take too long for 10 years for these things to be approved? Because it is a new modality of treatments. Not only they basically developed the treatment option, they developed the tests to, in fact, showing that the vision is restored to some part. And one of the tests they developed is called multiluminescence mobility test. In short, the test is the patient who had poor vision in the in a light would put in a room that has different luminescence of the light. And before and after treatment, they put a maze inside the room, and the patient is trying to track and go and find the exit by passing those mazes. So standardizing this test in a way that can deliver and find out if the vision had improved enough that with lower luminescence of light, someone can track and follow their way out of a dark room would give us a clue how much of the vision we had recovered. So it's not all looking at the chart and reading the ETOV, which is basically a small function compared to the whole vision. The vision is not only reading small prints, but navigating, doing the daily activity is an important part of it as well. As you can see, the RPE65 gene showed that after using the transfer of the gene in one eye, the luminescence curve get much improved in only that eye being uncovered. And when they did it a year later in the contralateral eye did the same improvement in the vision, showing that it is not just random, and by the delivery of the system, we can actually improve that. That form of delivery was done in subretinal, which is injection of the vector right in behind the cells in the retina. There are many genes right now doing the same thing and being in a different kind of phases, starting from CNGB3 to X-linked RP, and there are in different phases of the trials. So there are many active trials going on. So what are the challenges? One of the challenges is, as I said, not every gene is going to fit into the cargo of a vector of a virus. Also, the subretinal delivery, there was a question whether we're putting the medicine right into the center of the vision, we might even cause some damage, but there are good safety profile that I'm going to share with you in choroidermia that shows that the treatment is not actually having much of a side effect. Also, there are some challenges that we learned throughout doing the phases of trials. For example, in the CNG A3 chromatopsia trial that I'm going to share it with you as well. One of the things that I mentioned was the treatment that we do, that delivering the genes right under the center of the vision by making a small bleb of fluid underneath the center, does it actually cause some damage? And this graph and this picture is showing just after a week of doing the subretinal injection, the form and the structure of the retina is exactly coming back to the normal. So it shows that we are not actually causing damage, at least in the structural part, after delivering the medication as well. There is another kind of test that's recently developed, which shows the retinal sensitivity on a small scale. So the patient sits in front of a spectrum of small lights, and by sensing those lights, we can do the perimetry, which is the sensitivity of the center of the retina. And there are 3 different cases I'm trying to show you over here, which shows after the treatment with the RPGR, they keep getting improvement and improvement, and the area that was sensitive to light getting larger and larger. This is also a new test that we developed. And if you, the prints are very small, but basically it tries to show you what was their vision on the eye chart test. The eye chart test remained the same while the sensitivity of the retina grows. And it's showing that it's not only just the ETDRS or reading the chart, which is important, but also there are other factors that might get into the picture even before we can see the improvement in the ETDRS. And actually, they're showing the contralateral eye that there's not much of a difference from the start to the baseline in the 6 months after the treatment, meaning that the therapy is the effective part in this activity of the disease. There was also a big question in the mind of all the scientists that were trying to treat the retinal dystrophy is, when should we start the treatment? Like in the first 3 cases that I shared with you, there are different stages of life that we can identify the patients to be involved. Should we start early? Should we do it in a later stage of time? And how much of the retina should be preserved before we can think that this is a worthwhile treatment of delivering the gene to it? So, for example, the X-linked retinitis pigmentosa is a kind of rapidly progressing disease, and it starts in the early childhood. So the question is, do we have to do it early enough to make these changes, or even after we show some dropout of the cells, these treatment can recover those as well? And these are the questions we still have to answer. The other thing is, well, we are delivering some kind of virus into the eye. And with the knowledge that we have here as a population in the virus like COVID-19 and everything else, what is the immune reaction of the body to it? Is it going to make it to reject those viruses, or making those cells that expressing new protein in them as a non-self and trying to defeat them? And we are learning things from that as well. So there are after the start of the AAV, we put the patients on the steroids to reduce their immune response. But we have learned that there are some features on the imaging, for example, the clumps of cells underneath the retina that shows the activity of the immune cells. And we have to trace them in a way that catching the immune response of the body. And if it does, we can treat them early. So the picture on the left, that orange being larger and larger, meaning that treatment is effective, but at some point it drops out, and that was because the immune response was attacking those cells, and putting the patients back on the steroid would recover the treatment response, and the orange spot, which is basically the sensitive spot of the retina, was getting larger back to the area that we think is a good treatment response. What else is important? There are some things that I mentioned earlier. For example, how much of the association between the structure and the vision do we need? There are some diseases that, although the structure of the retina is quite normal looking inside the eye, but the function is not there because the protein is not doing the job that it needed to be done. For example, in the CNGA3, which is a chromatopsia, patients cannot sense the different color because a part of a protein that should sense the different color is not there. And the idea was, well, the structure is great. Let me deliver that only protein that is sensing the color, and the vision would be restored. However, that wasn't that simple. We didn't see that much of an improvement in the color vision or the test that we did in the achromatopsia part. And that showed that probably this is not as simple as we thought, because early in life, there is a connection between the eye and the brain that should be formed, which needs the good vision or relatively good vision. And maybe if the vision is not as great in the afterborn, that pathway hasn't been developed. And basically what we see as a lazy eye, which is the poor connection of the eye to the retina, might be persisted, and the brain is not as mobile as a newborn. So if later on we try to recover the function of the retina, that pathway might have not been developed as we like it. So there is not this notion of only the structure is the important part, but there is some consideration of how soon and how should be the timing of the treatment as well. And that's something that we learn over the time too. So these are all great, but what are we missing? So this is the list of the genes that I have in front of us. What is missing is another 270 genes, which is a quite large amount of it. So basically, there are a lot of diseases that causing the genes that causing the IRDs, and making one vector for each one of them might be a time-consuming task. And we also need a larger capacity vectors for something like H2A or ABCA4 and Stargardt that I mentioned. So this is not the only way that we are going to treat the IRDs, and there are other approaches that you can see many trials going through them. One of them is the CRISPR gene. Basically, we don't have to transfer the non-defected genes to the cell, but maybe we can just edit the gene that is already there. And CRISPR is basically an editor. It reads the missense and try to replace it with the correct gene. So it is a nice idea, and there are many studies that's going on, and the CEP290 is one of the genes that's actively a study is actually going on through it. Another thing is, well, yes, there is some defects in the gene, but at the end of the day, that gene has a function in a cell. Maybe we can restore the function or restore the toxic effect of missing that gene to improve the visual outcome. And one of the things that we know about the ABCA4 and the Stargardt is that vitamin A in a larger dose can be toxic because it's form a dimer, basically two vitamin A combined to each other and making the toxic component. There is a group that's working on as ALK01 trying to replace a vitamin A in a form that cannot form the dimer. And even though the ABCA4 is missing, by replacing that vitamin A, we might not form the toxic form that's making the cells in the retina drop out over time. So these are all the interesting idea behind the treatment of the inherited retinal disease. Our approaches is the retinal prosthesis. What if we can find or make a structure that works and simulates the retinal ganglion cells in the back of the eye, even if we lost the photoreceptors? And Argus 2 is one of the things that try to use the electrodes to simulate the film in the back. And right now it's FDA approved. The downpipe is it only has 64 electrodes right now. And the retina itself has 4 million photoreceptors. So what I tell to my patients is, if you imagine someday we had a black and white TV, and right now there are plasma TVs and like larger screens and high resolution out there, it is just a matter of time that we progress and we get the technology speed up to get to that point. It's the idea is there, and I'm hopeful that in our life we get there and we can bypass it. And some of the works that has been done is actually a mention of that, like Prism, which is a device that in Europe they approved, has a higher number of the electrodes in it, over 200. And there is a baby that I'm working myself on, which is called Genus, which basically I am trying to replace the photoreceptors with nanoparticles. So nanoparticles has the same dimensions of the photoreceptors, and there are some physics phenomenon that can make those nanoparticles be excited to different sources of light. And we are trying to modify those electrical phenomenons in order to make the nanoparticles work as a photoreceptors, which eliminate the need for a battery or a camera, and basically replacing the photoreceptors by just putting a nanoparticle layer in the back of the eye. So back to our cases. So that 5-year-old boy with the 20/50 vision in the right and 20/30 vision in the left eye, what was the gene that was defected? Doing the genetic testing on him and the parents, we identified the RDH12, which is one of the genes for Leber congenital amaurosis being defected in him. There are some active trials going on in the mice, and one of my colleagues, Dr. Thompson in Ann Arbor, actually developed the gene therapy, which she tested on the mice, and it was promising. I just correspond to her, and she's actively working with a company trying to get it into a trial as well, which is very interesting and exciting to know. The second case of the day is the H2A was the culprit of it, that 39-year-old male. And if you remember, there was a CRISPR gene mutation that they are trying to do. It's in a different exon of the gene, but opening up the discussion and knowing that this is an approach for USH2A diseases. It's very promising and exciting at this moment as well. And the third case of the day came back the ABCA4, as I mentioned, one of the high prevalence number of the genes which cause the Stargardts. And there are many studies trying to put them inside even the nanoparticles as a gene delivery system as well. And the ALCO1 as a vitamin replacement therapy is an active phase 2 trials that they presented their case in the past ASRS with promising results. In the summary, gene and genetic therapies shows great promise for the treatment of the inherited retinal disease. Genetic testing is more available and acceptable in clinics today. Treatments may need to be developed for all the genetic forms of IRD, but we are hopeful, and I'm happy to answer any questions or concern, and thank you for your attention. Sorry, I can't hear if.
Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, no, you're okay. I want to make sure before we move on, because I defaulted everything to mute. So
Right.
either please raise your hand or put something in chat. I'll make sure that anything that doesn't get answered today can be forwarded on to our doctor, but if not, we'll move on to our next speaker. Lynn?
I have a question about the Argus 2. Is that the name of the device, or is that also the name of the company that's pursuing it?
This is the name of the device. Dr. Mark Humayun at Doheny Eye Institute, which moved to USC, is basically the man behind the picture. And there's multiple companies and universities that is working actively on it, but the device is called Argus 2. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
And thank you for the presentation. Generally very interesting.
Happy that you like it.
Hey, doctor, could you comment on X-linked retinoschisis if you're familiar with that?
Yeah, so this is one of the studies that I mentioned in my presentation as well. So it is one of the most common form of the RPs, and there are active studies going on with the gene therapy with the X-linked retinitis pigmentosa, which are getting to phase 2-3 at this point. This is exciting that there are companies that working into getting one of the most common forms of RP into the pictures, and it's a priority game. And it's understandable that they want to go for the genes that are more prevalent as well. One of the challenges is it is also one of the diseases that can present early in life, and we are learning more and more about how soon is the treatment needed to be done and how effective that can be done for the outcome. But this is one of those few genes that the test is actively going on, and the race is into the place.
Okay, does no one else have any questions? Otherwise, thank you so much. That was very informative. As I've mentioned, we'll have a recording of this. Sorry if that interrupted your speech. Well, I know it was like 5 minutes into it, but we will have a recording, and I think I'd like to pass things off to Rick to introduce our resource speaker.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to see everybody here today, just because it kind of warms my heart. You know, Helen Keller says, you know, walking with a friend in the dark is better than walking with a friend in the light. So I appreciate seeing all your faces. My name is Rick Poplin. I am the resource chair for the Indy chapter. I was actually diagnosed with USH2A about 8 years ago. I don't drive. And honestly, it's been kind of lonely. So it's really nice seeing the support. It makes me feel much easier to go through this situation that we're living with as much optimism as possible. One of the greatest things is that we've got, you know, outreaches out there and different things out there and resources for people like me and others to make life easier. So that brings me to introducing Raymond Montgomery. He's the outreach coordinator at Bosma Enterprises. Bosma Enterprises is a nonprofit whose mission is to create opportunities for individuals who are blind or visually impaired. As an outreach coordinator at Bosma, he is responsible for maintaining social media pages, writing the quarterly newsletters, blogs, podcasts, public policy, assisting with internal and external events and inside sales. For many of these tasks, he was one of the first employees in the company to work on these projects. He is also the president of Bosma's Toastmasters Club and has been instrumental in helping the Bosma Toastmasters Club reach distinguished club status for the past several years. He recently was awarded Competent Leader and Competent Communicator certificates and an Advanced Leadership Bronze certificate from Toastmasters International. He also is a member of the National Federation of the Blind, NFP, Circle City chapter. As a member, he is responsible for managing the local club's social media pages, posting various content regarding legislation, technology, and scientific advancements, and research regarding blindness. When not working or volunteering, which he has his hands full, he spends time with his 3 boys, Raymond, Tyson, and Royce, who keep him very, very busy with their extracurricular, I gotta get that word right, extracurricular activities, homework, and especially their curious behavior. Raymond?
Hey, how's everybody doing this Saturday afternoon? My name's Ray Montgomery, and thank you for that introduction. Like you said, I work at Bosma Enterprises, and Bosma is a not-for-profit. And we like to say where medicine ends, we begin. For me, I lost my sight in 1997 due to a gunshot that caused me to go totally blind, which severed my optic nerve and went out my left eye and left me with a prosthetic in my left eye. And at that time, 2 months after I graduated from high school, I knew nothing about blindness. I didn't know anyone who was blind or had a visual impairment. All I knew was what everyone else knew was Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, and I didn't know how to play the piano and I couldn't sing, so I didn't know what my life was going to be like after that. But fortunately, I had a strong mother, and she, did everything in her power, to give me that courage and that valor to actually move forward within my journey. And I started to do a lot of rehabilitation up there in Northwest Indiana. Did a lot of my rehabilitation there, but I still wasn't mentally ready to accept the fact that I no longer have my vision. So you find yourself in a depressed state for a little while, and I think that she sensed that as well. So after about a year after I completed my first stint at rehab, I went out to Chicago, Illinois, and I would always tell people that's where my life actually had a turning point in life, because in Chicago I was more on my own, more independent. Staying out there, being in the dorm, and actually being able to meet other individuals with various, vision loss. I learned a lot about what we're talking about today, about retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt, AMG, macular degeneration. Sorry, messed that word up. But just the various levels of vision loss, because I knew nothing about, blindness, but just being exposed to the, the different levels and the different ways that individuals were able to lose their sight due to diabetes and things of that nature. So I'm glad really just to be a part of what you guys are doing right now, just really learn more about how we can prevent some of these diseases like cataracts and glaucoma, because a lot of diseases, with treatment can actually be prevented from you and helps you prevent you from losing your sight at the end of the day. But after I left Chicago and, I met all those wonderful people, I was really, really inspired, and I went on to Purdue University, Calumet in Hammond, Indiana. Started off, didn't know what I wanted to do, but eventually got my degree in communications. Really wanted to get into radio, television. That was my dream. So I did a lot of interning and did my own radio show. But I always tell people, life got real when I had my first child. That's when life took a turning point, because didn't know that I was facing the 70% unemployment rate due to my vision loss. I didn't know the discrimination and the misperceptions that employers already put on me prior to me even stepping in for my first interview. So, learning a lot, about advocacy and working with Bosma and NFB and just different organizations. I learned how to advocate for myself. I learned about different resources that were available. Eventually, I did get got my degree from Purdue, but like I said, I was really facing the uphill battle, and I didn't know about that battle until after I graduated from college, because college was a comfort zone. It left me, I wasn't working at the time, really wasn't trying to find work, just focusing on my education. But once I got my degree and I had my first child, I really knew that it was a lot of things that I didn't know about blindness and really being quote unquote disabled, and what society actually thought about people with various disabilities and various levels of visual impairments. But thankfully, I moved to Indianapolis in 2008 after I had a house fire, but that was a blessing in disguise. So in 2008, I moved to Indianapolis. Thankfully, I found a place called Bosma Enterprises. And at that time, didn't know anything about Bosma, didn't know that organizations like Bosma even existed. So thankfully, I thank my girl for finding Bosma for me, because she typed in blind jobs and Bosma came on up and she drove me right on over. So I didn't know anything about Bosma, but once I got there, it was been a life-changing place. And for all you guys that are not familiar with Bosma Enterprises and what we do, Bosma is the largest employer of people who are blind within the state of Indiana. And we are what we call a National Industries for the Blind organization, NIB. And there are other organizations similar to Bosma, about 92 other organizations similar to Bosma that works with the federal government to provide job opportunities for people with various levels of vision loss. So we at Bosma, like I said, we're the largest employer of people who are blind, and we also do rehabilitation for individuals who have lost their sight. But our main export is we do package exam and surgical gloves for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So that is our major contract. That's our bread and butter. That's how we are able to provide job opportunities and rehabilitation for the thousands of Hoosiers right now living with vision loss in the state of Indiana. So during the pandemic, we were very busy getting them gloves out the door. Everybody was calling for gloves, but we got to make sure that we allocate a certain amount of gloves to our primary customer, which is the VA, helping to serve those veterans. But Bosma Enterprises, like I said, we're the largest employer of people who are blind. And right now we employ about 200 employees. 55% of those employees are blind or visually impaired. Like our CEO, Mr. Jeff Mittman, veteran himself, lost his sight in Iraq in 2006 after being hit by a missile. If you ever get a chance, listen to his TED Talk. It's a very inspiring story as well. But we also do rehabilitation. So if you come and if you're experiencing any type of vision loss like retinitis pigmentosa, diabetic retinopathy, any type of vision loss, you will come to Bosma. And once after you get connected with vocational rehabilitation and things of that nature, you will come to Bosma, and it's a 4 to 5 month program which we tailor to each individual's needs. So we're going to teach you how to do orientation and mobility. which is learning how to walk with this cane, learning how to get back and forth to the grocery store, using paratransit, just really being more independent, because if you can't get from A to B, you're not going to be able to get to work and back home. So we want to make sure you get that skill set. We also do teach you Braille. We teach you how to do personal management, which is cooking within your home, labeling your clothes, just knowing how to tidy up your home, knowing when your food is prepared. We also going to teach you adaptive technology, which is working with screen readers, Zoom text, CCTVs, magnifiers, iPhones and iPads and Android phones and things of that nature, because right now that's working on the go is key right now, and to be able to connect with people from all over the world, because blindness is sometimes is an isolated disability. So if you're not able to connect with people via the phone or via the web, or just getting that face-to-face contact, sometimes it does get depressing in that sense. So we want to make sure people are connected. So we have a program for our seniors, which is called our Senior Connection Program, which individuals 55 and older can call into this phone line and just meet with like this small community. Right now it's over the phone, but play trivial games. They do a book club. They meet. They just really are able to connect with one another, because sometimes as you get older, people's vision seems to fade, but we want to make sure that we are staying connected with these individuals. And we also do Vision Rehab 101, which is a week-long program for individuals who may not qualify for VR services, because you may or may not know VR went through several changes over the last years, and if you don't have an education or an employment goal at the end of the day, it's hard to get services at some of these centers right now. So we're trying to combat that by providing you with some type of training for free with our Vision Rehab 101 program. And we also do adjustment counseling there, just really adjusting to blindness, because it is an adjustment period. So we have small group sessions, we have one-on-one sessions with a licensed therapist there who works with these individuals, like I said, on a one-on-one in a group setting, and really just being able to talk, express yourself, and just really hearing what other individuals are going through or have went through will help you in your journey as you go through with blindness. So, and we also do employment services at Bosma. So once you go through our program, we have an employment service team that helps you find gainful employment. Like I said, there's a 70% unemployment rate for people who are blind, 62% in the state of Indiana right now. So what we're doing is really trying to help combat that by providing this type of training. And we also do STEP, so Student Training Employment Program, for our juniors and seniors right now in high school, because like I said, it's hard for an adult to find a job, so it's 10 times harder for these school-age students who are looking to find gainful employment or looking to get that work experience so they can see what direction they want to take their lives. So we do work with several employers throughout the state of, throughout central Indiana to provide these job experiences. We also,
Hey, Ray.
Yes.
So this is Allie. I'm getting notes, or excuse me, chat from Jeff, which please unmute yourself. He said he was a student last year in the Salesforce program, and also subscribed to the Navigating Blindness podcast.
Oh, yes. I gotta get to that, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to cut you off. So
no, I don't want to take up too much time, but yeah.
No, you're not at all. You're not. We wanted you to speak about everything, but I want you to know that people are highly interested right now. So
okay.
Continue. Sorry.
Yes. But the Student Training Employment Program, like it's a 4-week program over the summer. So if you know any juniors and seniors, they're looking to get that work experience, please contact us on that end. And I'm glad he brought up Salesforce. Salesforce training, I don't know if we just started a new class or not, but Salesforce training right now is a big deal right now at Bosma. It's really providing great career paths for people who are blind and visually impaired. And if you don't know about Salesforce, it's a CRM, and it's really a big database that people can enter in spreadsheets and They keep track of their reports and things of that nature. We're a Salesforce user at Bosma, and it's very blind friendly as well. We do a Salesforce training, which is virtual. It's a 16-week course. You must have great JAWS skills and computer skills. But this course, once you're done with this 16-week course, we're going to help you find an internship and hopefully find gainful employment. And I know once you finish that course, I mean, you're making probably up to $50,000 a year, and you could work remotely, work anywhere, because Salesforce is a big platform. A lot of hospitals and industry individuals use Salesforce right now. And I'm glad Jeff got the opportunity to take that class because it's a great experience and a great opportunity for him to go forward. And we also do BEP, Business Enterprise Program, which we connect with. Excuse me, let me start over. Business Enterprise Program, which is the chance for individuals who are blind or visually impaired to own and operate their own small vending or snack shop. So this is a 30-week program where individuals can come in and be entrepreneurs. And once again, that's another great program as well. They do so many different things at our rehab center. It's like it's so many things that go on over there where we're really trying to help combat this unemployment rate and really help combat the misperceptions of people who are blind and visually impaired and what they can achieve in their lives. So, like I said, Bosma's been a great place. It's not a shelter workshop by any means. Every employee there has a great benefits package, 403B, retirement fund, and they even give you your birthday off. So I can't beat that either. So, but definitely a great place. Individuals come in, they get to work, various modes of transportation. Some people take Uber, some people take Yellow Cab, or Z-Trip, or Open Door, or family and friends, but it's not always highly recommended because family and friends are not always reliable when you're trying to get back and forth to work. So that's another way that you can keep your independence as well. But yeah, if you guys got any questions, I don't want to take up too much time, but if you guys want to learn more about Bosma and what we're doing, please contact me. You got my information. I'd love for you to come out and take a tour of the facility, and I'll be the one to conduct that for you. So if you guys got any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, Ray. I'm curious on, is there a particular ride share that is more accessible than others?
A particular what? I'm sorry.
The ride share app that's
ride
more accessible.
Mm-hmm. No, I find them both to be accessible. Lyft and Uber, I find them both to be very, very accessible. With scheduling transportation. And one of the things, definitely subscribe to the Navigate Blindness podcast. It's on Apple, Google, and SoundCloud. Great content about what's going on at Bosma as well. But yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Ray, this is Rick. Quick question. Is there any sort of like volunteer opportunities? I have teenager children that need to help out people. I didn't know if you guys offered something like that.
Oh yeah, I work closely with the volunteer manager, and I know we was talking about this yesterday. Yeah, we're always looking for volunteers to come in. We definitely have things for people of all ages, I would say. But yeah, give me a call or give me an email, shoot me an email, and we can discuss that further. I can put it in the chat here once we're done.
Okay, thank you.
Well, one thing I definitely will do, if everyone's comfortable, I'll include anyone who presented today, the emails. If Ray, you're comfortable with that. Amir I believe he was comfortable with that. So including how to contact them if you weren't on the call today or just they weren't able to answer it today. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, hold on, I want to make sure. And yes, the slides are, I'm looking at the chat now. Yes, you can get the slides as well. So when I send out, probably on Monday or Tuesday, I will send out the recording of this as well as the PowerPoint presentation that I sent. I'm not sure about the doctor because that's his personal stuff, but We'll make sure that everything that we can gets to you. But for now, let's see, I'm going to pass things off to Lynn. If he's still here. I hope he's still here. Okay, yeah, he's still here. Okay. Do I need to ask to mute you? Here we go. Yes, I think I do. There we go.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
Didn't want to
we
watch,
can hear
didn't
you.
want people to have to watch me eat lunch, so. Anyway.
You're fine.
Yes, my name's Lynn Tyler. I'm the revenue chair, and when I joined, a few years ago, I had about 6 years experience with a similar organization, but for a different disease. And so I kind of brought that perspective with me. And, I really admire all the hard work and the success that the foundation has had and the Indianapolis Vision Walk. But as the revenue chair, I suppose it's my job to want more. So nothing I say is intended to be critical of any efforts that have gone on today. And, whether I have any success in that, remains to be seen. So certainly don't want to be critical of any efforts that have gone before. But this other organization I was involved in, they had 3 main events, and they raise a lot more money. So I asked myself, now, why is that? And one obvious factor was, well, maybe a lot more people were affected. And my initial research proved that to be the case by about a factor of 10. So I'm like, okay, we're really doing pretty well then. And then I saw that the foundation does, at first I just thought it was retinal diseases, some of the rarer ones, but I thought it does do work on macular degeneration. And so that brings into 10 million people. So now I'm back to thinking that we can do better. So anyway, one thing that we're going to start, or we're trying to start anyway, is having a golf outing. I've played for a long time, then I quit for a long time while I raised my children. Now I'm trying to start again since they're getting older. And I brought this up at a meeting, and then after the meeting, I immediately thought, what have I got myself into? I've done this once, it's a lot of work. Can I do this all myself? And then Rick, who you heard from earlier, mentioned that he's done it 8 times. So I'm like, hey, now we're talking. So I mentioned this to Rick, and as you can already tell from his presentation, he's a high energy, get things done kind of guy. So we're getting rolling with that. Allie's going to be helping us out. We've got a meeting coming up on Tuesday. So we're going to try to kick that off next year, maybe in the June timeframe, sneak it into this fiscal year, separate it from the walk some. Certainly don't want to cannibalize any money from the walk. If anybody out there listening has any interest in golf or has any connections with people who like to play golf and might want to buy a foursome, or people who work in the golf business and might want to donate something, we'll be looking for some swag to give all the golfers, make it a nice event, food, drink. We'll take anything pretty much. We'd love to hear from you. It sounds like Abby's going to make our contact information available. And then one thing I learned about the foundation when I joined too, not after joining, is that they encourage a lot of DIY events. So if anybody out there has any ideas for their own event to raise money, we had a video conference in the last couple of months about ideas to raise money for the Vision Walk. And there was everything you can imagine, pretty much, having some friends over for cocktails or burgers or whatever, bowling event, anything. So if you have any ideas, we just encourage you to pursue them. These don't have to be big money events, as my credit card statement reminds me every month. A lot of small numbers add up to a big one. So, we're grateful for anything. And I've probably droned on past my time, so I think I'll wrap it up. I will be happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
You have not at all. I think that was perfect, but I want to make sure I don't interrupt any, if people have questions, I want to make sure they get answered. Typically, it's the end of the hour that people have questions that they're like, oh, I want to make sure I ask this, but if anyone has questions for Lynn, he's been our MVP for raising money this year, so please ask him away.
Well, did the doctor drop off? Because our goal has to be to put him and his colleagues out of business until we haven't raised enough money.
Nope, haven't got that yet. All right. Okay, so let's go on to Angie. I'm so excited to hear about your experience with, and I hope we can see him. Or her,
Yeah.
excuse me. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with your
You wanna
first guide
bring her
dog.
in? Yeah, thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think first of all, well, I do need to introduce myself. My name is Angie Kirchoff, and I am the president of the Indianapolis chapter for the Foundation Fighting Blindness. And I became involved with the chapter just after moving to Indianapolis about 4 years and kind of searching out some general information about RP and a group to get involved with. So last spring, I contacted Allie, and we that's when our foundation, our chapter was started. And she asked me to be president. And I thought, well, you know, as long as I have a good committee behind me, I can do that. So I have a great committee behind me, and we are getting off to a really great start. So I was a teacher and a corporation director for a school corporation until about 5 years ago. And I have RP. Did I say that? I can't remember if I said that or not, but I was diagnosed at the age of 32, and it progressed to the point where I really should not be driving anymore. So at that point, I did retire a little bit early and moved to Indianapolis, where my daughter and grandkids live. So with all of that being said, I knew I had to make a decision about whether to start using a cane or get a guide dog. And I was one of those kids that, since I was very small, I loved animals, cats, dogs, horses, whatever. So I knew that a guide dog was probably going to be my choice, and started doing some research, and 2.5 years later, I have one. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey, but first of all, I want to give you a quiz, and you can see how much you know about guide dogs. This is just 5 statements, and they're true and false. So if we could just have you do a thumbs up if you think it's true, thumbs down if you think it's false, then we'll go back through them after they're finished. All right, easy enough. Number 1, only about 2% of those that are blind or visually impaired work with a guide dog. Is that true or false? Okay, number 2, guide dogs indicate to you when it's safe to cross the street. Is that true or false? Number 3, it can take up to 3 years and cost approximately $25,000 annually to breed, raise, and train a dog for a person who is blind. True or false? Number 4, guide dogs can go everywhere their handler can go. True or false? Okay. Allie, you're making me laugh. Number 5, guide dogs make great family pets. True or false? Okay. All right. So let's see how much you guys really know. Let's go back to number 1. 2% that are blind or visually impaired work with a guide dog. That unfortunately is a true statement. That's a very small percentage, but it's unfortunately true. But I want you to think about the last time that you actually saw someone working with an actual guide dog. And it's hard to think of sometimes, especially in the Indianapolis area. If you go to New York, you go to DC, LA, you're probably going to see a lot of them. But here you see a lot of assistance dogs, but you don't see that many guide dogs. So only 2%. Number 2, guide dogs indicate to you when it's safe to cross the street. That is false. Okay. Dogs can't read. They can't tell you when the traffic light turns. They don't know when to go or not. What happens is the handler reads the traffic patterns according to the surge of the traffic and listens very carefully, and then indicates to the dog to go forward, gives them the command forward. So the dog will go out and attempt to cross the street at that point. Now, if the handler made a wrong decision, then that's when the dog will stop. And the dogs sometimes stop closer to the cars than you want them to. But and that is called intelligent disobedience. So they make a decision to go against their handler and stop. So yeah, that's up to the handler. Number 3 can take up to 3 years and cost approximately $25,000 annually to breed, raise, and train a dog. That is false. It is $50,000 annually to breed, train, and raise a dog. Very, very expensive animals. They get most of their donations from large businesses, family legacies, individuals, but I did not pay anything for Abby because I qualified, and I'll go through what I had to do to qualify, but she's worth a lot, but you know, she's worth her weight in gold to me because she's just an awesome dog. Number 4, guide dogs can go everywhere their handler goes. That is true. That is true. They can go to hospitals, they can go to restaurants, they can go to airplanes, Uber cars. We are renting an Airbnb in December, and it is not pet friendly, and Abby can go because they, according to the American with Disabilities Act, she is protected by that. I am protected by that, and she is allowed to even go in there. Number 5, guide dogs make great family pets. That is true. That is true. At the end of the day, they're just a dog. And when you take her harness off, she's just 70 pounds of goofiness. I mean, she comes in, she runs, she plays ball. She loves to swim. She swims with my grandkids. She catches tennis balls off the boat. She's just a great, she loves playing with our other dog that we have, a family dog. She loves playing with her. However, you know, with all that being said, I do have to work with her to keep up her skill set. And I do try to work with her daily. I don't think that once she gets very well trained that I would have to do that, but she's still working on her skills, and I'm still working on my skills with her. So yeah, so when she's in harness, she is working, but when she is out of harness, she's just a big goof. She really is. I'm going to share my screen and show you a picture of her. She's in here, and I'll get her in just a minute, but she will disrupt the whole presentation. Right. So I'm going to make her wait for just a few minutes.
Well, I also would like to ask, while Angie's sharing her screen, does anyone have any questions for Angie? And if you need me to unmute you, please raise your hand or comment or anything like that.
What school is your dog from?
She's from Guiding Eyes for the Blind in New York.
Beautiful.
How did you come to select that particular place to get her? Or did you go to different ones to decide?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that next. So yeah, that is an important process.
So is it Guiding Eyes in Smithtown?
Yorktown Heights. Guiding Eyes for the Blind in Yorktown Heights, New
Okay.
York. Yeah. So
Because
Jeff
there's
is
also
getting.
Guiding Eyes for the Blind in California and Oregon. So that's what I was wondering.
Is that Guide Dogs for the Blind, GDB?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a different
yeah,
school.
Awesome.
yeah. And I've heard a lot about them as well. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that application process. So like I said, I knew I needed to make a decision about whether I was going to use a cane or work with a guide. So what I did, I went to the National Association of Guide Dog Users, which is nagdu.com, and it contains a list of all the different schools. And most of your schools are going to be on the West Coast, the East Coast. There's a couple in Florida. There's one in Michigan and one in Ohio. So I began my research starting with this, and there were just a lot of things about the school that I selected that I really liked. One of those things was the fact that they were raised in homes. Some of the guide dog schools will do a prison, have the puppies raised in prison, and then bring them out and socialize them more. And I think that can be a win-win, but I just really wanted my dog to have been around kids and things like that more. So they were raised in homes. Another thing they had was a running program where they trained guide dogs to run. A lot of their dogs run in the New York City Marathon. And I just thought that was so progressive and so unique. Another thing was their breeding. They've been breeding their dogs for over 70 years, I think. And some of their dogs have actually gone to Spain to produce guide dogs over there. So there was just a lot of things that really appealed to me about this school. So I decided to go through their application process. And the other thing I liked about them, they only produce two types of dogs, Labrador retrievers and German shepherds. And some of your schools can have up to 4 or 5 different kinds of dogs. And I just felt like by having only 2 types of dogs, that really allowed them to focus in on the breed and get acquainted with, those dogs really well and know those dogs really well. So that was important to me as well. So am I back? The application process is a 3-step process. You go through a paper application, which includes a physical. It includes an eye exam from your ophthalmologist, and you do have to be considered legally blind to qualify for a guide dog. It includes general questions about your lifestyle. For instance, do you work? Do you have hobbies? Do you ride subways? Do you visit cities frequently? Do you get out and exercise every day? Things like that. And then you needed a recommendation from your orientation and mobility specialist, which I think Ray was touching on that. That is a program that you go through to orient yourself to basically your surroundings with the cane and crossing roads and general care of the home and things like that. So you need those things in your paperwork. So you fill all of that out and submit it. Then the second part of the application process was the home interview. So a lady came from New York. She flew in and came to my home, and she spent 3.5 hours with me. She interviewed me. She videotaped me walking with my white cane to just a common place that I go, which was the grocery store. And she measured my walking speed, because that's something that's very important. You want to get a dog that is suited to your walking speed. And then she again went through all those questions with me. How often do you ride subways? How often do you travel? How often do you fly in an airplane? Things like that. So she wrote a report, and then all of my paperwork that I had submitted in her report went to an evaluation committee. So the third part of the process was the evaluation committee looks at everything. They look at your video, and they decide whether you would benefit from one of their dogs. So I received a phone call after that, a couple weeks after that, and I was told that I was accepted, and that the wait list for a dog would be about 7 months. They just needed to make sure that it was matched all of my my lifestyle, I guess is what you would say. So 2 years later, I received a call from the school, and this was because of COVID. Obviously, it just hit at a bad time. But so I waited for Abby for 2 years. The application process took 5 to 6 months, and then the wait list was about 2 years. So they called me and they said they had a dog for me, and that they would send an airplane ticket, or they would have a ticket waiting for me at the Indianapolis airport for me to fly to New York. So I flew to New York for 2 weeks. I stayed on there. It's like a campus. It is just a very, very beautiful area of New York. And they feed you, they house you. They're just the kindest people that I've ever met. And there were 4 people in my class, and we had 2 trainers. So the day I got there, I met the other 4 and met my trainers. And then the next day was dog day. So they worked with us in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they sent us all back to our rooms, and they said, we will bring around your dog. We had no idea. I didn't know if it was a male or a female, if it was a shepherd or a lab, no idea what to expect. So the door opens, and this lively big black lab comes running through the door and gives me a few kisses on the face. I give her a few treats, and then she turned around and ran back out. She was done. She was wanted to go back with her trainer, and I was like, okay, wait a minute, what's this about? So they are very bonded to their trainers, and so she was confused as to why all of a sudden she was with me, who she didn't know. She didn't know my scent, my smell, my room, nothing, and being taken away from this trainer that she had been working so closely with for months. And so, it took her a while. It took her quite a while. Every time she would see the trainer, she would pull toward the trainer and away from me. So it was interesting. But we had 2 weeks of very intensive training, mentally and physically, just exhausting, learning all of the commands. For me, I would get them confused. There are harness commands, there are non-harness commands, there are hand signals. You give a verbal and a hand signal. There were times I was telling her left and doing right with my arm, and she was looking at like, this lady's crazy. I have to go home with her, so it was, like I said, it was exhausting. But at the end of the 2 weeks, we got put on an airplane and we came home. And she was a totally different dog when she got home with me. She was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. And she did great. She did great once we got home. So we've been together 3 months now. She is turning out to be an excellent guide. And they told me it would take 6 months to a year to become a good team. But we go everywhere together. I teach a class on Wednesdays. She goes to the classroom with me. She loves the kids. We go on several walks. We go to stores together. We go to Ubers together. We just go, she's with me all the time. I do feel much more confident with her. she's in the beginning, I felt like my left arm was 3 feet longer than my right arm because she was always pulling on me. But now I've just got into the swing of her speed, and she's fast. She's fast and she's strong. But yeah, so we walk fast. It's kind of fun to walk fast, because when you lose your vision, you become much slower. You're always afraid you're going to run into something or fall or miss a step or something like that. So with her, I don't have that fear anymore. And that's such a breath of fresh air. It's been a big adjustment having her in my home. I've never had a 70+ pound dog in my home that sheds profusely. So I wear a lot of black these days, and I vacuum every single day. And she's like a toddler in a china shop. You know, she's just doesn't know how to get all of her energy out. But she's, you know, she's got life, personality, and goofiness, and keeps me laughing. And everyone talks to me in the stores, which I don't always want that, but I'm everyone's best friend now. So it's kind of fun, though. It's a good time to educate people on a guide dog and visual impairment as well. A lot of people think I'm training her when I'm out in the stores, and I always say, no, this is my dog. I'm visually impaired. So it's a good time to educate as well.
Angie, so I know I want to get the conversation started, at least, because I'm very interested in this. I've supported Paws for People for years and years, and obviously Foundation Fighting Blindness I work for, and will continue loving work for them. But how do you feel now with, you know, with people saying how, like, what you said in the beginning, I want to understand if you feel intimidated by the process or just anything like that. I'm curious on how that has been for you.
You mean from other people, or?
Yeah, just everything, because I know, like, starting it, I want to hear from Jeff later on, but I'm just curious on, first of all, like, people asking to pet your dog possibly, or just those kind of things, if it's intimidating.
Yeah, I don't feel intimidated at all. I do look at it as an opportunity to educate. People do try to help me sometimes too much. You know, they almost get in the way of the team work that we have. So that can sometimes be a problem. But other than that, I'll give you an example. I was at the dentist, and this mom with 2 kids came in behind me, and I was checking in. I had Abby with me, and the mom told the kids, look, she's training her dog. She's working with this dog for the blind, you know. And I could hear behind me telling them. And then so I went over and I sat down, and the little boy comes and he sits there and he looks at me and he says, what's your dog's name? You know, he just wanted to know all about it. And so then I told him that, you know, that she was my dog. And so then he wanted to know all about what it was like to not be able to see well, you know. So it was a great conversation with this little 8-year-old boy. And the mom, when she left, she said, thank you so much for spending time with him.
Oh.
But it's just a good educational experience, I think, for everyone, not just for me, but for everyone around me. So yeah, I'm not intimidated at all, but I'm a pretty much an extrovert, as you can tell. So
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one. It's only because my wife has been asking me to look into this. So I'm a little intimidated by the whole process personally. But I am curious to know, how was the adjustment from not having a guide dog to having one? I'm sure your habits and everything changed.
Yeah. That's a great question. I get up much earlier than I used to, because she is just set to eat. I mean, she is a lab, and she wants her breakfast, and she is up early. So we get up early, and you know, the time that I give to her is it has been more than I have anticipated, because if I don't work her, I feel guilty. Like if I just have a day around the house, I'm like, oh, I really need to spend 20 minutes walking Abby, just if nothing else around the block or whatever, and working on some basic obedience. So that, and we were told we were supposed to have playtime with them every day. So I throw a ball with her every day. So now I've got the feeding, the throwing the ball every day, the working her every day, and then the grooming / vacuuming every day. So the time with her probably was my biggest adjustment. So yeah, and the application process, I can help you with that, Rick. It's not intimidating. The one thing I would recommend is to pick 2 or 3 schools to apply to. I only applied to 1, and then I ended up waiting, for 2 years. So I would just triple my applications and send it out for 3 or so. So
No, thank you.
Angie.
Yeah.
Hi, Lexi. Hey, as you know, Morgan is very interested in this whole process, and
yes.
And so she was originally thinking, and that timing wise, that she would like to try to get her dog prior to going off to college, and she has been advised by several people in the guide dog community to wait until after that first year of college. And what I'm hearing you, as I'm hearing you kind of share your experience and describe life pre and post Abby, I'm starting to understand now, like, why they're making that recommendation.
Yeah.
It's making a lot of sense to me. So thank you very much for kind of sharing in detail,
yeah,
what your experience has been like. I think that's helpful. And I think it does make sense why, Morgan being patient and waiting until after that transition to college has happened before she adds another transition to having a dog makes a lot of sense. So
yes, it really does. It really does. They do take more time than you anticipate. You think you're just going to get them and walk out the door and it's just going to be easy, and it's not. So
yeah.
Hey Angie, so we have one other person. I'm asking them to unmute themselves right now. Hopefully they had their hand raised. Are you unable to unmute yourself now? One's a May.
Hey Angie, Jawanza, how you doing?
Yes. Hey Jawanza, I wondered if you were there.
I'm here. Don't worry about it. You did a great job, Angie.
Thank you. Jawanza, how many dogs have you had?
I've had 3 dogs, 26 years.
26 years of 3 dogs. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Did I do okay was I accurate?
Yeah, you was accurate, very accurate. It was a great job you did. And another thing about Guiding Eyes that she didn't mention, but she knows it's true. Guiding Eyes has the best follow-up program.
Yes.
Of all guide dog schools, the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I did forget about that. How could I forget about that? Thank you.
Can you explain, whoever it may be, can you explain more about that? I'm not familiar.
Yeah.
Angie can, because go ahead, Angie.
Okay. Here comes the queen.
Abby.
So come here, Abby. Come on. Let's see if I can get her to put her paws up here. Yeah, what Jawanza was explaining is the follow-up program that they have. So you are assigned to a regional guide dog mobility instructor. And mine and Jawanza's, Jawanza lives here in Indianapolis too, is Melinda, and she lives 2 hours from here. She's worked for Guiding Eyes for 28 years, something like that. And if I have a problem, I just text her immediately. And she came out and spent 3 days with me right when I got home from New York and worked with me. And, it was just really helped to have her.
Wonderful. So just a support system, like how are you doing with,
and
with your 70-pound dog?
If you have a problem, she'll come right away. So
and other schools don't have that. Other schools, let's say, have an issue, you have to call the school directly, and then the school will send somebody from where they base, New Jersey, California, whatever, things like that. So Guiding Eyes has a robust support system that other schools just don't have.
Angie, hi, it's Morgan.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Morgan.
I was curious about how, you did the play.
I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat it.
I was curious about how you did the plane ride with Abby.
Oh, the plane ride was awesome. There again, another opportunity to educate. I had probably a 12-year-old boy sit next to me, and he was just enthralled with Abby. But it's amazing. You take the top off of their harness, they curl up, and you just kind of slide them under the seat. A 70-pound dog under your seat. So, and she laid perfectly still the whole time. So it's no problem at all.
That's good.
Yeah. It's good to see you, Morgan.
Good to see you.
Is there anyone else? If not, there's Abby.
I'm trying to pull.
Yeah.
Hi, Abby.
Hi, Abby. She's a cute girl.
Can you
That's
see her?
that's a big lab. Wow.
Yeah, she's huge. She's huge, but she's
a big black lab. And with a green bandana. She's adorable.
I have to put a bandana on her to figure out which end to switch.
Well, does anyone else have any questions? I'm glad that we have extra time, at least 10 minutes or so, because Jeff, you asked if we'd have this extra time today to talk about what you've done for Vision Walk. And I know you've, with your brother, and you've had 5 guide dogs, but I'll let you speak to yourself. But thank you so much for joining us today. He's part of our leadership team now. So everyone, welcome Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Jeff Lucasina. I'm in Pittsburgh right now. I'll be moving to Indianapolis next August after training with my 5th seeing eye dog. I'm going to be going to the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy to do my master's. So I'll be more involved with the chapter at that point, but be working on some things prior. I got involved with the foundation back in 2015. Was invited by Steve Soroka to a regional meeting, and he told me about the national conference. At the conference, I didn't really have an eye doctor at that time because I was diagnosed when I was 5.5 with what they'd said was RP at the time. At the conference, I got connected with Dr. Jose Sohel from Paris, France, who came to Pittsburgh. And he spends half the year in Pittsburgh, half the year in France doing research. And I got into my retina tracker, had genetic testing done, and found out that I had Cone-rod dystrophy, as well as a condition called Alström syndrome. It was discovered in 1959 in Sweden, and there's only maybe 5,000 or under who have this condition. It's a double mutation of a gene, I don't remember which one, but so I've been involved with fundraising since then, and I'm probably closing in on about $20,000 in the last 5 or 6 years raised. My team is called Jonathan's Dolphins, named after my brother. He could swim like a dolphin and scared the crap out of every lifeguard that we knew. And he passed away 20 years ago. And my friend who works at the Indianapolis Zoo helped me do some videos this year of the dolphins at the zoo. So that's about it.
Let me unmute myself. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know that can be kind of intimidating, but if you have that video, I would like to share one video, but I know I don't want to, this is very off the, okay. But if not, during the meantime, while he's pulling it off, does anyone want to mention anything about any of the speakers, or just, this is meant to be a two-way conversation. So please let us know if you have any questions or any comments, feedback, any of that. But If not, Jeff, please go ahead and share that video.
I don't know if this is going to work.
Oh. So who is that on the screen?
That's Ed, my friend.
Okay. Okay, we cannot hear him, but we can see the screen, half screen. He's adorable, the dolphin, and your friend. Well, how about this, Jeff? Can you send this
Yeah, I'll have to send
to
them via
me?
Dropbox.
Yeah, send this to me, and then I can
Sure.
just include this in our follow-up call. But with that said, does anyone have anything else they'd like to say? I'm really happy that we have these extra few minutes to ensure that we can make sure anyone has their comments or questions fulfilled. But if not, I'll make sure this is recorded. And not only that, but I'm going to make sure to send it to everyone who registered, not just people who attended. So with that said, if no one has any other questions, I'll give you a few minutes back to your Saturday. And we are going to we're going to have these quarterly. So thank you so much for joining. And we hope maybe not next time, but the one after that will be in person. So thank you so much all for joining. Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.